You got to look at that sort of what's my bread and butter and what's making money and what makes me survive, yet to a point where you kind of go, I really want to do this, but it's not going to pay great money. Looking at both scenarios, I think I'm comfortable enough now to say that drones are very much the future.
Hi, and welcome to the Your Story Studios podcast, a podcast where we talk about all things content creation. And today on the show, I'm joined by a man who needs absolutely no introduction. But for people who are meeting you for the first time, who are you and what are you doing here?
Wow. Hi. So my name is Marty from One by One Media. And what am I doing here? I want to talk about what I do, I guess, to you and your audience. It's just fantastic. I've started as I actually went to uni, RMIT, did scientific photography about a long time ago, in film days. So I was still stuck in the dark room, I guess, and staying in sort of those dark rooms and everything else sort of just filled my head with photography, which is great. Yeah, so I did scientific photography and then essentially didn't see myself doing it, because if you do finish scientific photography, and back then it used to be a course that you could potentially only run your own business, potentially work in a hospital with kids, or being forensic photographer. And to be honest with you, taking photos of abused kids and other things, because obviously of the nature of the work, didn't really appeal to me too much. And being a forensic photographer as well, it kind of, you go to a location where there's obviously, things happen, do you know what I mean? So as much as I think it is exciting, a lot of it didn't appeal to me at that time. And then at that time as well, it was didn't really feel like running my own business, and it's kind of going to myself, what am I going to do? So I kind of dropped the whole thing and did IT for 16, 18 years.
Wow.
So, So I did, my IT degree and Microsoft certifications, Cisco certifications, and just being a biggest nerd ever. So I used to have my mates over to play video games and network all the computers, in the early 90s. From then it's sort of, my kids were born and my wife was like, hey, why don't you stay home with the kids and I'll go back to work full time. I was like, you know what, that is a fantastic idea. So I did that, and it started off as I really loved time-lapse photography. I loved doing that sort of show that time passing by. So I got really heavily into time-lapse. And from then it didn't really eventuate as a business just yet, but looked after the kids, and then essentially slowly moved towards that sort of video production work and everything else. Still having a part-time job. I've worked in a hardware store, a big retail hardware store in Australia, which I don't want to say who it was. Because,
I can guess who it is.
Yeah, but it sort of did that for a while, and essentially try to make money out of photography by doing art photography. So big prints to a lot of people's walls. And I actually sold a few. So there was a few people that, that used to live in Melbourne and loved Melbourne so much. They moved to Rockhampton or anywhere in Australia, yet they wanted to have Melbourne art on their wall. I did sort of set up a website and all the other stuff, and it sold a little bit, but it wasn't sort of anywhere where I can actually make a living out of it. You know what I mean? So I kind of dumped that idea and just started doing photography for corporate world, which I enjoyed.
Soul crushing.
Yeah, it is. And I enjoyed it for a while just to get out of it. So it wasn't a lot of work. So maybe 1 or 2 jobs a week if lucky. But the main focus was kids. And, just making sure that the kids are all, well fed and,
Alive,
yeah, as you probably know.
Yeah.
And then basically, that corporate world didn't really suit me, because I came from that corporate world from the IT, And then from there, I kind of thought to myself, what else am I going to do? And then video production started started really enjoying it, you know what I mean? And I've noticed myself, when we used to go away with the kids, with the family and whatever else, I did a ton of video content from our trip, you know what I mean? So we did a trip to like Japan and, all the different countries and whatever else. And my wife was like, you're doing all this content, so why don't you just create a video? And I said, yeah, all right, cool. And then I started creating those videos. So I could sit on the computer for literally 10 hours straight editing. And I loved it, enjoyed it. And then, yeah, just like, my wife was like, you enjoying it. Why don't you just move towards that sort of video production and try to make some money out of it? So I was like, yeah, all right, cool. But like the whole business idea was like, you're doing one job here, one job there. It wasn't really that much of a, experience in it. And the business culture was totally different. So then, you kind of move on and, you're trying to understand the business structure. And, I've got a few friends that have run their own businesses. So I was, hey, can I, help you with the business and help you create a video or do whatever else, you know what I mean? And then, yeah, just sort of snowballed from there, I guess, you know what I mean? So, what else?
And that brings you today. So tell me about One by One Media. What do you normally do on a weekly basis?
So, yeah, thanks. So One by One Media sort of eventuated probably about a couple of years ago now, so one of my first business's ideas was Melbourne Images. And then I tried to register the name Melbourne Images as on a business sort of, to get an ABN for it. And they told me to get stuffed because it's already taken. But it wasn't really Melbourne Images, it was Melbourne Image.
Okay.
Image Melbourne, the other way around, you know what I mean?
Okay,
so it was totally different. So I was just like, you know what, I've got to change it over and, just make something different, something easy to, I guess, remember for my clients and easy to say, easy to spell. And I just basically went with One by One, you know what I mean? So I've noticed there's a lot of companies that are One by One, but then One by One Media, that's just me. Essentially now what we do is we specialize in manufacturing, corporate, and basically anything in between. What we do is we go to a company and we do a whole story about the company, what they do, get people, mic them up, move lights around and make sure that they look fantastic. And that's sort of bread and butter at the moment for me.
On one of those shoots, is it just you or do you have a team?
So mainly I run the show by myself. I do have an 18-year-old son now, so he does help. He does work full-time, but in between he sort of helps a little bit as well.
Does he take direction well?
Yeah,
Some days.
Sometimes. I have to yell at him a few times. But look, Evan, one of the other guys that I sort of work with, he runs his own sort of show as well, but I get him in to help me. Recently, I employed a social media manager as such, just to sort of help me out, just a part-time thing. I think 2 days a week at the moment he's doing it. And he's just doing a few posts for me on like LinkedIn and sort of social media is not my strong point, as a lot of I think your guests probably will have. But, like to have that someone on the side and I can just say, hey, Andres, can you just basically just add that in there? Send him that video and he will do the whole write-up, you know what I mean? And look, these days, I think, AI is a big thing as well, where he will basically take a photo or video and then put it into AI and the AI will basically create GIF of the actual, story that we're trying to convey. He will change things around and then he will upload everything. So he's got access to my social media accounts and everything else. So I think, like having that team behind you is great. It is a very scary thing to do though, because it's almost to a point where I have to make money and I have to have clients to be able to pay for that team. A lot of them it's contracting. So they give me an invoice, I'll pay that. And then, I've got my sort of set to go guys to do so. A lot of work at the moment comes from like a drone operation as well. So being a fully certified drone operator, a lot of work comes from that as well. So there are some clients just get me in for droning component. And so that's basically summary of One by One Media, you know what I mean? So
great. Well, you mentioned that you need to have clients. How do you find your clients or how do they find you?
Yeah, great question. It's very tricky initially, you know what I mean? As you need to put yourself out there and you need to show what you can do. When I started off, a lot of work came from free work, essentially.
Ooh, that's a dirty word.
It is.
Free work.
I know. And you know what? Like I said to my wife exactly the same thing. She's like, "You doing this for free? What are you thinking?"
Very disapproving tone. I've heard that before.
Yes. And, and I said to her, I said, look, you know what? Like in order to be able to win work, I need to show work. It's actually quite a funny story. One of my very first big clients that I picked up was through another videographer or photographer, should I say. And this was a long time ago. This was close to 10 years ago now. But the story is he rang me up literally on that day. He goes, Marty, I need a videographer. I've got this shoot. And can you come and obviously help me out with it? And you know what? Like, I was free. So I was just like, yeah, sure, no worries. Let's do it. And then we did it. I edited, sent it to the client. And then the photographer ghosted me. He didn't pay me for like 3 months for this job. And I was just like so frustrated. But you know what? Like, it's an interesting story because the client that I shot for, they came to me directly because they loved the work so much. And they kept on feeding me work, you know what I mean, constantly. And then from that, they had a marketing agency. So that marketing agency came to me again, you know what I mean? So as much as this guy was a, bit of a snowflake and disappeared, the work kept on coming from that client. So if I didn't do that job, I mean, eventually I got paid because he like disappeared to Italy somewhere or whatever else. That client kept on coming to me. And then from that work, the snowball effect happened and a lot more work happened, you know what I mean? So sometimes you have to do that sort of free work to be able to create, a lot of things. And there is a couple of new things that I'm sort of discovering at the moment that I know I have to do it for free in order to make some reasonable money later on, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, what kind of projects are they?
ooh, yeah.
Top secret or?
No, not top secret. I've sort of indicated on my social media a little bit. So as I mentioned, I'm a fully drone certified. So I've got my Red Bull Reoc. I've got my EVLOS, so extended visual line of sight certifications. And one of the guys, I've been flying for a while, like, drones and everything else. He came up with this new idea of getting this massive drone and then attaching a big flag to it and then lifting it up and then marketing, advertising with the drone. So there's going to be some cool content coming up with that. So that should be interesting. But essentially what it is, it's a drone marketing videos. Wow. I don't know. How do you just say it's videos? I don't know. But it's just visual drone marketing, you know what I mean? Which no one's actually done it. So this guy had to do a special certification to be able to fly. Now this drone is over 25 kilos. So it's close to 30 kilos. So it's really heavy, really big, but we can lift a 20-meter flag with it. You know what I mean? So it should be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tell me, how did you get into drone operating? What sparked your interest, and what was the path for you to get all those certifications that you just talked about?
Before COVID, during being an IT person and knowing and loving all my tech, I was just like, you know what, the drones back 10, 15 years ago, they're very new. So I was just like, I got to get into it. I got to do it. I got to,
get in on the ground floor.
Yep. Yeah. So try to understand it, try to get into it. Before all the rules and regulations and cusses and, all these, people that, Karens will come up to you and you're not supposed to fly here and whatever else. Before all of that, I started just playing around with it at home. So, putting together motors and speed controllers and flight controllers. And DJI was one of the companies that sort of really innovated the whole space, I guess. So look, I love being into sort of new tech. I started doing it. And one of my very first jobs, this was over 10 years ago with Phantom One, I think it was. A client contacted me and we've got, it was a construction client, and they said, I want you to fly the drone between the cranes in one of the construction sites. And I was literally pooping my pants, I can tell you that, because back then the drones were not reliable, you know what I mean? And they were really, how can I say, hey, you're lucky if you get back to the way you started from, put it that way.
I was going to say, do you have any horror stories? Like you put the drone up and then it just flies off and then
there's been few horror stories. But not really, like I've crashed a few drones, as you probably know. So it's like back then you're supposed to have a return to home as such. So
even today, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Yeah. But back then it was still quite new and whatever else. So you you're supposed to be able to switch the controller off, and this thing's supposed to come back and land where it started from. Where at one stage I was testing it, and this was a DJI F550 drone, it's a hexacopter, so it's a fairly big drone. It's probably just over 2 kilos back then. And then I go, all right, let's test it. And then I turn the controller off and I can watch the drone, and the drone keeps on flying away. Like, crap. So I was just like, turn the controller back on, link it quickly. And just a matter of time before it crashed, I regained control of it and I brought it back home. And then that's it, pack it up and go, you know what I mean? I fly a lot of FPV drones. And those FPV drones don't have any sensors.
So for people that don't know what an FPV drone is, what is that?
Yeah, so FPV drone is essentially a drone that you control. You see it through the goggles. So you control the drone through the drone essentially. So it's almost like you're sitting in the cockpit of the drone or fighter pilot drone, and then you fly it. And with those drones, you can squeeze in small holes and do a lot of work that normal drones can't do. And I kind of started that during COVID, just before COVID sort of started. I really dived deep into that sort of FPV world. And FPV, for people who don't know, FPV is first-person view. So it's a first-person view drone, essentially. Those drones are totally different kettle of fish. I've got about 10 of them, I think. and most of them have been put together by myself for a specific purpose, you know what I mean? So, I've got a couple of 5-inch drones, so 7-inch drones, 6-inch drones, and a couple of senior whoops as well. With people don't know what's a senior whoop, it's got protector guards on the propellers. So essentially you can fly closer to people with their permission, you know what I mean? Yeah. Those drones, you can get some really close proximity footage. Like today we did in the Knox area, we did flying out from the squash center, you know what I mean? So you fly through the window and then you can show the squash center and then fly out through another window, another door, where essentially a DJI drone can't do that. Well, it essentially can, but not in that smooth, flowy motion. So yeah, it's an FPV drone. It's just really a drone that can do certain things that other drones can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And looking to the future, what do you see for yourself in 1x1 media?
Great question, because the future it can go anywhere. You know what I mean? And it's essentially, like you got to look at that sort of what's my bread and butter, and what's making money, and what makes me survive. Yet to a point where you kind of go, I really want to do this, but it's not going to pay great money. Looking at both scenarios, I think I'm comfortable enough now to say that drones are very much the future. Yeah, I've got a lot of drones at the moment. So I've got drones that are cinematic drones. So I've got Inspire 3, I've got Mavic 4, Mavic 3, I've got my Mavic 3 Mini. So there is a drone for different scenario. I've got a thermal drone as well, the Matrice M30T. And I'm really hoping that the drone component will come together and actually, because look, at the end of the day, you want to be able to go shoot something, give that footage to the client or whoever needs it, and then just, hey, go on holidays, you know what I mean?
Live the dream.
Yeah, living the dream. And I think that's the future. I think the drones, the FPV drones are really good because of the fact that with the FPV drone, for instance, you can't just pick up that drone and fly like a DJI drone. You really need to spend a fair bit of time in the simulator, first of all. You need to be able to spend a bit of time on the sticks, because the sticks are so sensitive that if you go with the left stick too much, the drone starts doing flips, you know what I mean? So you got to really be precise on the sticks to be able to get that smooth footage, you know what I mean? I think the drones are really the future of it. And the fact of it is, these days you can't really use them unless you have fully certified. So like to get all the certifications done and everything else, it took me over 6 months to do it, almost $10,000 to be able to, to create basically that side of the business, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a financial investment and it's a time investment as well.
Definitely. And you know what, like slowly now, a lot of videographers, and I work with a lot of videographers, a lot of marketing agencies, that they don't have those certifications. So there are certain locations that they can't fly and I can. Just to give you an example, I'm in the Essendon area. So very close to Melbourne Airport and Essendon Airport and everything else. So there are a number of times where I've got called and say, hey, we need to be able to do, a bit of footage in, say, not far from Essendon, yet within that sort of space of no-fly zone. Then, I have access and I can actually enable my drone to be able to fly in those areas where people like they don't have,
People like me.
Yeah. So if you go there with your DJI drone, you turn it on and you'll say, the drone will basically look at your GPS location and say, hey, you're not allowed to fly here. You need to put the special code in, and you need to basically be able to get approvals and everything else. And in Australia, the way it works is, so REPL is sort of the first sort of certification that you like to be able to fly commercially, essentially. But then you've got your REOC, which is your remote aircraft certification, where if you have your REPL, for instance, you can't actually talk directly to CASA to get approvals. Where you have your REOC, you can submit flight plans and safety job assessments and other things to CASA, and then they will actually approve you to do certain operations in the area or whatever else, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so, for our international audience, CASA is...
It's a governing body of the airspace that we use. So we, like a drone, if you just fly drones for recreational purposes, you can't go into certain locations. Obviously, safety is a big deal. You can't go higher than 120 meters, for instance, or you can't fly closer than 30 meters to people, buildings, and other things. So
how high can you go? Because I know the 120 rule. I had my drone out the other day and I got to 120. I was like, can't go any higher. It would be nice to, but I can't. How high can you go?
Yeah, so at the moment, I can only go 120. Just for the fact is because over that 120 meter period or height, so 400 feet, there is aeroplanes that potentially use that airspace, helicopters, airplanes, anything else. So essentially, I can go 120 meters as well. If I want to go higher, I need to go and get approval for that as well. It's just a standard safety measure that CASA has created to be able to make sure that no one goes over that 120 meters. And we sort of got to stick to that rule. You know what I mean? Which you can change it on the drone, so you can go higher, but it's very risky business. You know what I mean? And I mean, look, I'm done drone flights that are higher than 120 meters, and you got to be very mindful of what's coming, what's like if there's any aircraft in the area, any helicopters. And the great thing about the new drones at the moment is they do on the controller, they actually have sensors, or they actually scan the airspace, and if there is a aircraft that's fairly close by, it will give you a warning, you know what I mean? So DJI and other manufacturers have come up with a system. So a aeroplane's actually got a beacon in it, and if that beacon's turned on by the pilot, your drone will be able to see that aeroplane, essentially. So, but yeah, look, rules and regulations apply to me exactly the same. It's just I have authority to basically go and get approvals to be able to conduct those flights on another level where you essentially couldn't. You have to employ me to do so.
Yeah. So if you do get approval, how high can you go over that 120?
Depends on the job. So I have to submit. So if I have a client, I had a client, they came to me once and they go, can you go up to 400 meters? And I said, I can, but I need to get approvals. So it depends on the job, really. So
are those approvals easy, or is it like 6 to 8 business weeks? Or
spot on, yeah, 6 to 8. So at the moment, what I've heard, CASA, if I launch any paperwork with CASA, they will be between 7 to 8 weeks minimum, and the cost of it is actually quite high as well.
But I need the footage now.
Yeah, no, you can't have it now. But the cost of it is fairly high, and as soon as I say that to the client, they go, yeah, probably don't need it that high, So, we sort of, I think I'm here more of a mediator between sort of CASA and the client to make sure that everyone does the right thing by law and safety authority, essentially, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I used to work at a agency that does drone and all that kind of stuff, photography, video. And if they needed to go super high, they went in helicopters.
Yeah.
That was very common for them to go in helicopters. So I guess if a client really needs video footage, go to Eston Airport, get into a helicopter and film it that way.
Spot on. And you know what? Like, if they really need that, they must have a good budget for it, you know what I mean? And, like, if a client rings me up, I say to them, hey, what's your budget? You know what I mean? We don't know. Well, hang on. You need to know, because more or less, if I charge you $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 for a shoot, you're wasting my time and you're wasting your own time by saying we don't know what the budget is. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it all comes with time and experience to do certain things, and and make sure that everyone is safe, everyone is informed. You know what I mean? I think communication is a big deal in our job, you know what I mean? Where, you know, like I had a client, the factory is literally on a takeoff strip of the Essendon airport. And they go, can you take some, you know, aerial view images? And I said, there's no way I'll be able to even get approval for that. You know why? Because they will have to shut down the whole airport for us to fly a drone. So, and they go, oh, really? I go, yes, really. You know, so I had to sort of that communication, the education of clients, that is a big thing in our job. And I think, you know, like a lot of it, I personally think to a point, there is a 60-40% sort of ratio where you communicate and you talk to people, it's 60%, and actually creating a video, it's like 40%. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Let me know if, you know, anyone else sort of thinks different way, just let us know, I guess. But
Yeah, let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
And Marty, to finish off today's episode, do you have any words of wisdom for our audience?
Yeah, words of wisdom. I'm not going to say, you know, get into it, but
Just do it.
Yeah, no, just, you know what? It takes time, you know what I mean? So if you're into something, like you enjoy something, you try to spend 20 out of 24 hours doing it, you know what I mean? I think, you know, like I really enjoy the tech. I really enjoy that sort of drone. So when I sort of got into that FPV drones component, I spent 40, 50 hours on the simulator before I even touched the drone, you know what I mean? And I think if you enjoy something, you really need to crack down. And a lot of people these days, you know, they go, I want to be a YouTuber. They don't understand what it takes to be a YouTuber, you know what I mean? You got to post 2, 3, 4, 5 videos a week, you know what I mean? Something
Quality videos as well.
Exactly, yeah, quality videos. And, you know, like it's a hard job, especially if you don't actually make money out of it for a year or two, you know what I mean? And I think, yeah, like you're saying, you know, if you enjoy something, you really need to be able to sit there and, you know, like some people enjoy weddings. I hate weddings, you know, so I'm not even going to try to bother that or even make, you know, anything out of it. It's just more about sort of, you know, sit down and actually try to understand and get into that space of understanding from A to Z what needs to be done in that space, you know what I mean? So if you enjoy something, just put your time and effort into it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than doom scrolling on Instagrams and, you know, watching YouTubes for other YouTubers or other creators doing something that you should be doing, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but that's the, it's a pretty straightforward word of wisdom, but I think it's a powerful one, hopefully.
Yeah. And if you enjoy it, you never work a day in your life.
Exactly, 100%, yeah.
Well, thanks, Marty, for joining us today on the Your Story Studios podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.